Thank you for joining me on the Andyland mid-afternoon show. My name is Andrew Christian, and today we're going to be reviewing one of my favorite movies that I've ever seen with one of my personal heroes in my life. My credentials for reviewing this movie is Father of the Year, Husband of the Year, Child of the Year. When I haven't shaved for a few days, my wife thinks I'm the caveman of the year, and not unlike today. So, why don't we get started? I'm gonna have my guest. Her name is Sarah something. Her last name. I know her last name. I'm just kidding. Sarah Alderton. Yes. So, before I ask you any questions about yourself or you introduce yourself, red red pill or blue pill?
Usually blue.
Usually blue pill. This is going to be a long video. So, The Truman Show is the movie that we're going to be looking at today. Sarah, what are your credentials and what did you think about the movie?
My credentials are Christian pastor kid, generally ordinary human being. I like movies a lot. And this one I did like a lot, so yeah, it was better than I was expecting.
So, hopefully we can go over this movie and the themes in this movie and kind of talk about it from that Christian perspective that we're kind of pursuing and seeing what we can actually draw out of the movie. So, why don't we just go over a summary for those who haven't watched the movie. I watched it a few weeks ago. You watched it more recently than me, so correct me on anything that I get wrong. The Truman Show is basically a movie. It's a movie about a documentary show. And the show airs for like 30 years or something like that from the moment of Truman's birth. So basically the premise of the show is this guy Truman is born into this show, and the director Christoph adopts him and televises his whole life. And everyone in this is spoilers, by the way. So everyone in all his friends, all his family, all of that are just paid actors. And it's pretty stinky and heartbreaking, to say the least. So the intro to the show, they're interviewing the actors. So his wife and his best friend, and then a few other people, I believe. And they're kind of saying, like, this is our life. This is how it is, it's his life. It's real to him, because it is. And so we kind of move on in the show, or the movie. We learn a little bit about him and stuff. And one day he's going to work, and he's walking out to his car, and he sees a light from the sky, which is like a studio light, and it just falls on the ground in front of him, and he's like, wow, that's pretty weird. What is that? And knowing the premise of the movie, I remember this, knowing the premise of the movie, you see that, and you think, well, how could he not think that's weird, right? How could he not think that something's going on? But if you really put yourself in his shoes, like, if that happened to you, what would you think? Would you be like, oh, well, I'm in the middle of a show and everything is fake?
I mean, like, that's not my first thought.
No.
By any means.
Maybe it might be my second thought, but it's not my first thought. So that happens, and he kind of, sort of begins to question what's going on. We're introduced to his friend Marlon later. They have like a really good conversation, and Marlon's like, I would die for you and all that stuff, which sucks because they cut over to the director Christoph, and he's feeding Marlon the lines, and he's not really saying these things. And we're introduced to his wife Meryl.
Yeah, Meryl, I think that was
so she's obviously fake too. She's an actor. Mm-hmm. And then we see kind of the backstory of Truman. In the show, his dad died in a boating accident, so he's afraid of the water. Mm-hmm. the town that he lives in is like an island, and so he can't really get out of this town because it's surrounded by water because he's scared of the water. So he only has his mom. Then we were introduced to this girl that he liked in high school. Her name was Sylvia, I believe.
It was
Lauren?
Laura, and then her real name was Sylvia. We're gonna find out later.
Oh, okay. Lauren? Laura?
Lauren or Laura?
I think it's Lauren, so I'm just gonna say Lauren.
Okay.
She, in high school, Truman liked Lauren. They actually cared for each other. But the directors and the writers ended up splitting them up, basically, and introducing his wife, Meryl, who he doesn't really like and kind of has a bad marriage with. But Lauren is one of the few people in the show that actually cares about Truman. So that's kind of one of the themes that we can talk about later, is that nobody really cares about him and his personal life, his own personal in his mind and stuff.
Yeah.
And one of the quotes in the movie is, Truman says, "You never had a camera in my head." And so they don't care about him.
Yeah.
Let alone, would they do anything about it? So the whole show is just completely immoral. And nobody cares about him except Lauren, but they take her away. So, yeah. One day, Truman is going to work, and he switches the radio channel, and it goes to the walkie-talkies, where the set people and the directors and all that stuff are talking to each other. And he hears that, and he starts questioning more, and he starts kind of going crazy. And he walks into a building that he wasn't supposed to walk into and sees a room full of actors. And he's really starting to question things. And then his dad, who didn't actually die but died in the show, appears. And they act like he's a homeless dude, and they act like Truman is crazy. Because it's like, how do you see your dead dad? So he's going nuts.
That entire sequence was crazy to watch for me. I was like, they were on the walkies describing his turn, as he's turning onto a street. I thought it was really cool.
Yeah, and scary. That would be scary.
Yeah.
So he goes to his wife and he's like, "We're leaving. We're gonna travel the world or something," and he wants to go to Fiji because Lauren said, "Meet me in Fiji" or something like that, right?
Yeah, the dad of Lauren came and picked her up, take her away from Truman, and he was like, "We're moving to Fiji." And he's like, "Okay, mental note."
So Truman wants to go to Fiji. So he tells Meryl, "Let's go to Fiji. We're leaving. We're going." Gets in the car, and there's a big, long bridge, and that's the only way out of the town other than the ocean. And he can't drive across a bridge. He just can't bring himself to do it. Which is kind of cool because it's pretty realistic, I feel like. If you were actually in that situation, you'd still hold on to your fear of the water, I feel like.
Oh, 100%.
He doesn't just get over that. Even towards the end of the movie, he kind of gets over it, but...
Yeah.
So he makes his wife grab the steering wheel, and he just punches it, and they go across a bridge, and they make it across a bridge, and they're driving, and they keep getting stopped, and obviously it's... Kristoff who's stopping him, and there's a big forest fire and blah blah blah, and he basically ends up not getting out because they stop him and they bring him back. And then his wife leaves him, Meryl, in the show, which is she actually left the show because he's nuts and she doesn't feel safe around him and stuff. So throughout this whole thing that's going on, all of this stuff is televised in public or on public television. And so we see sequences of other people in the real world watching him on TV and they just love it. They can't get enough of this. So that's another theme, is the consumerism of just at all costs, just keep me entertained.
Yeah.
So they split, and then Truman goes into his basement. There's a couple conversations that he has with Marlon and stuff, but he's basically figured it out, kind of.
Yeah.
That his whole world is not real. And so he goes into the basement, hides under these covers, escapes. They can't find him. All night they're looking for him, and then they find him in the ocean. He took a boat out in the ocean, and he's kind of conquered his fear of the water. Mm-hmm. He's trying to escape. That's when we see Kristoff's true colors show. Yeah. And he says there's a quote. I think I wrote it down. A bunch of his. I didn't write it down, but he says something along the lines of like, somebody says, "Don't do this. You're gonna kill him." Mm-hmm. And Kristoff says, "Well, he was born on TV." Yeah,
he was born on TV.
Implying that he doesn't care. Like, he can die on TV. Mm-hmm. And that's, it's good for ratings and good for money. So, or his art or whatever he believes in. Mm-hmm. So, Kristoff is making big waves. He strikes a boat with lightning. And Truman appears to be dead. But then they calm the water down. And he gets back on the boat. And Truman says, "You'll have to kill me." Yeah, he says, "You're going to have to kill me." Mm-hmm. Which kind of shows that his pursuit of what the reality is and what the truth is more important than his life. Which is a big thing we can kind of talk about. So, he keeps boating, and he eventually gets to the wall.
Yeah.
Which, it's like a big dome that this whole thing is filmed in the ocean and all that. He gets to the wall, and he finds these stairs, and Kristoff says, like, you can leave, because there's a door, and he can leave. Kristoff says you can either leave, or you can stay in this world where you're happy and you know, and maybe it's not the true reality, but it's the reality you know and understand. Yeah. So you can stay, and Truman chooses a red pill and walks out.
Well, he even says, Kristoff says, like, there's no more truth out there that is better than the one I created.
I forgot about that.
That was, like, a really good quote. I liked.
Yeah. So, obviously there's a lot going on in this movie. There's a lot of my own personal fears in this movie that they definitely preyed on. So, some of the themes is definitely immorality. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of just immoral, not caring about other people generally. Lying, greed, consumerism. And then a big thing we can talk about is lying in order to help someone. Mm-hmm. Where you basically, they have decided what their reality is. And it's a big thing in today's world. And I just want to live my life the way I want to live, and everyone needs to accept that for what it is and support that. And so lying to somebody, even if they want it, is not good and not helpful and still immoral.
Yeah.
And then there's just general reality of accepting the reality, and there's that goes along with truth. So, yeah, those are the themes that I kind of got out of that. Mm-hmm. So you have some notes. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, kind of along the same lines. I think that the truth theme is, like, the biggest one for me that I noticed, because, like you were saying, Lauren's the only one that seems to actually care about Truman. She even wears that pin that he noticed, like, how's it going to end? I mean, like, the show, because she was a fan of the show before sneaking on, and, like, she's the only one who's thinking about that, like, the show's got to end somehow. He's gonna die on screen, and he's never gonna know the truth. And that's the scariest thing to me. It's like he could go this whole life filmed for everybody's entertainment, and then just never know. But thankfully, that's not how the story goes, which is good.
Yeah, and then Kristoff at one point said, "We accept the world we're presented with. It's as simple as that." And so, which is true.
Yeah.
Kristoff he has a lot of true statements that aren't necessarily good.
Yep. I wrote that one down too. I feel like in the movie show, it's all the same. Like, they frame him as sort of the God figure. Like, his name is Kristoff, stuff like that. And he even goes like, "I'm the creator," of the television show.
Yeah.
So it's kind of not subtle, but, like, if we're thinking that way, then it's kind of even sadder, because they're saying that God
Yeah.
figure, is like the villain in this story. It closing him in on all this stuff, which is why that message like is really sad.
Yeah, it's like the show is interesting and it's a good commentary and all that stuff, but it's pretty obvious that it's a metaphor. Mm-hmm. And it's not a good metaphor for anything that's really good. It has good messages in it, like the red pill stuff. I keep saying, like, you have to understand what truth is, and you have to, and we can kind of talk about it in biblical terms of like what we need to do is devote our life to pursuing the truth.
Right.
You know, John 14 verse 6, Jesus himself is sitting with the disciples, and he tells them, I am the way, I am the truth, and I am the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. Mm-hmm. And so just from that statement, like, we can know that there is real truth out there, because pretty much everything in our whole world is a lie, and it's not the truth. And it's all promising satisfaction, and the whole world is a guarantee of happiness, you know, but it's all just a lie.
Yeah.
And so we have to devote our lives to the truth, which is Jesus, like, and Jesus is the way to God. And so the only way that we can get to the ultimate truth and the ultimate happiness is through Jesus.
Right.
You know? And it's really that's really important, because if you die, like, you could die today, anybody could die today, like, you've devoted your whole life to a lie, and so you're gonna die and you're just gonna go to hell, basically.
Yeah. Essentially like Truman if he just didn't ever find out the truth, so if we're using that metaphor, which sucks.
Yeah.
Say the least.
Yeah, and there's, like I said, one of the themes is accepting people's reality or lying to people in order to, like, create an artificial happiness.
Yeah.
And that's big in today's world. Like, you have the transgender movement that's going on, as well as the homosexual movement that's going on, and basically all of that is just a denial of truth.
Yeah.
You know, and just a denial of basic facts. And the longer that you deny the truth and what actual true morality is, the further you're going to get. And so even if you try to support someone in their any sin, if you support anybody in any of their immoral actions, it's going to lead to something else. And when you do that with the whole society or the whole world or the whole country, like, you just go further and further and further and further, and you just take it further until truth is so blurred that you can't even figure it out. Even, and like, good becomes bad and bad becomes good.
Yeah.
So
even like the viewers of the show just like are so invested that like the lines for them between truth and reality could, like, I feel like can be blurred. Like, they're just rooting for him the whole time. Yeah. The thing is, because it is true, like, it is his actual life that he's living. And then the funny thing, like, well, the sad thing is the ending line of the movie. It ends with Truman leaving the show. Yeah. And then the two guys who are watching it are just like, oh, what else is on? Just like, doesn't even register, like, it doesn't matter. Yeah. His life didn't matter. Yeah. At the end of the day. Yeah.
You can't really figure out what, like, even after Truman leaves the show, like, what's end next? Up wondering, like, what happens next? You know, what happens to him? And, like, Christoph is right. There's no more truth out there than there is in the dome thing. Like, you can't,
because he has nobody.
You can't find truth in this world. That's my point.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fair. Yeah. And then if you think about it, though, like, if we think about it just as kind of without the Christoph God thing, because that's depressing, what they're trying to say through that. And Truman is a really great hero of the story, because he's just like, I'm gonna persevere through all this because it matters to me what the truth is. And so he does find that. So if we look at it like that, then it's a good story, because he found the truth at the end, and it set him free. Like, I even have that verse, John 8:32, and you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. Yeah. And that's, like, kind of very clearly depicted in this. He literally finds the end and he escapes.
Yeah. Yeah. So we can kind of talk about that Kristoff being God, because I kind of glazed over that. But it is sad, because if you talk about predestination, which basically means like God is omniscient. That's a word, right?
Yeah,
All
omniscient.
powerful.
Yeah,
Yeah,
all powerful, omniscient, omnipresent. Yeah.
all that stuff, and he basically God predestining everything, and he has a plan for everyone, and he sets it all up that way. And people will look at God and say, why did you set my life up this way?
Yeah.
And I see that in the movie, like God is doing something wrong because he doesn't give people choices, and he doesn't give them free will, or whatever you're trying to say. But
Yeah.
and it's sad because people do get mad at God because of the way that they blame him for their problems.
Right.
When the reality is, like, this is a little off topic, but the reality is that we are to blame for our own problems, you know, and all of us sin. So Romans 3:23 says, "For all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God." And so we are all enslaved to our sin and trapped to our sin, and so you cause it. You do your sin. It's not like I don't do my sin or choose to do my sin. And so I set my life up for failure, you know. And you were just saying that, like, people blame God and they say, oh, how evil, I would never do this to anyone. I can't believe that he would do this to me. How can a good God do this to someone? When the real truth is that he is good, and God is good to people, and his plan is good. And the reason that I don't think it's good is because of my own sinful disposition and sinful premonition of what I believe is good.
Yeah, like, this is what I know I deserve. Like, I should have these nice things. It's like what the thoughts that will come.
Right.
But it's like, no, you don't actually know what you need in the grand scheme of things. God does, though.
Yeah. The same people that are saying that God needs to be doing good or God needs to do something different are the same people that say, like, boys are girls and girls are boys. Like, it's all your whole perception of what truth is all messed up, and people just accept the truth that they decide to accept.
Yeah, like, we accept the reality of what's in front of us.
And so there has to be something higher than my perception or my understanding.
Yeah.
Which is Jesus, you know?
Yeah, there is something.
Yeah.
Which is the real hope of it. And the thing... that's my phone. Sorry. The thing that I think if we... it's so confusing, this movie, because, like, there's the metaphor with Kristoff being God, and that's not... that's not what we like. But, like, if we think about it just from Truman's point of view and forget that, then it is hopeful, because there is a truth, there is a higher power, there is something beyond yourself, beyond what you've seen in your tiny little fishbowl, which is a directing choice I really liked in this movie. Is a lot of times the lens is, like, with a little vignette around it, like he's in a fishbowl, and it's like, that's a great visual representation of sort of our life and how we see our life. It's just this closed off little tunnel vision of like a small picture, but like what God sees. You only choose
to see what you want to see.
Yeah.
Kinda, is that what you're saying?
Kinda, but also, like, there's just so much we don't know that God does.
Yeah.
Like, he knows the whole thing.
Which I think is so important about the pursuit of truth, is understanding that, like, if I was able to understand everything and able to understand truth, like, I guess I'm glad that God has kept things out of my understanding. That I can't understand things, because it forces me to trust him.
Exactly.
That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Like, it forces me to trust him, knowing that he is bigger than me and that he understands things and has created things bigger than my understanding. And it forces me to trust him and know that he is the truth, because he's bigger than me. Yeah. Because if I was able to understand all the things that he is, like,
you wouldn't need him anymore.
I wouldn't need him.
Yeah.
That's right. And so John, 2 verses before what I just quoted, John 14, I believe it's verse 2, Jesus tells them, if it wasn't this way, I would have told you. Mm-hmm. You know? And so we can trust in Jesus and know that he's not lying.
Yeah.
Because if the things that he's telling us wasn't the reality, like, he would tell us.
Yeah.
You know?
And that kind of goes into something that an argument I hear a lot is like, well, then he should provide really good evidence and proof of his existence and everything.
Yeah.
And then you have no doubt. But that's not the point, because there has to be an element of faith in there. And, like, he can't just give you the answer. Otherwise, like you were kind of saying, you don't really need him anymore. It's just like, whatever. So there has to be something, like, no matter how much scientific minds don't like that fact, you can't know everything. There has to be that last step where I gotta believe what he's saying is true.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, which kind of goes against the whole point of what we're trying to say, which is you can't just accept the reality that's presented to you.
Exactly.
Because everything takes faith, you know, for Truman to believe that all his friends are real and his wife is real, like, that takes an amount of faith, which is just proven because they weren't real.
Yeah.
And so the whole time he believed they were real because he had faith in that.
Yeah.
And so for him to step into the real world and, like, he's never going to trust anything ever again.
Yeah. It came crashing down. And so, like, he has nothing left. And what is reality anymore for him? Like, that's gotta... It's not necessarily a happy ending at all, because he just is not going to have a good life at this point.
Yeah.
There's nothing left. So.
Yeah. So did you have any other themes?
I mean, we kind of went over, like, the biggest one is the truth aspect of it.
I think that's pretty much the best thing you can draw from this movie, is that you have to understand the truth.
Yeah, and you should, in that sense, be like Truman, in that he cared so much he wanted to keep pursuing that, and then he reached the horizon there and found it. So that is something we can emulate.
Yeah. So I would say this is kind of a short video, but maybe, unless we have more to say, but Truman, at the end of the thing, he says, "You're going to have to kill me." He's in the boat and he's about to die, and he says, "You're going to have to kill me." And he screams at Kristoff. And I think that's something that I admire, and that's something that I want to be in my pursuit of the truth, of the actual truth, which is Jesus. I want to commit my whole life to that, and I want to be willing to die for that truth.
Yeah.
You know, and so I think that's something that we should all pursue. And I there's a lot of people in the world that are confused about the truth and don't understand the truth. And so I would just say to you, if you don't know that truth, if you don't know the truth of Jesus, then go and pursue that. You can start in John 14, or John. Read the whole book of John, probably.
Yeah.
But there is truth out there, and it's not within yourself, and it's not within your happiness, and it's not within your sexuality or your gender identity or anything else that you can come up with, like, to be your reality or your identity. Like, it's not within you, you know?
Yeah, because those things are temporary. Those things can come crashing down.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, Jesus says that, like, that if you build your house on the sand, which is the world and yourself and your own desires and passions, it's all, when the storm comes, it's all just going to fade away.
Yep.
You know, but if you build your house on something not within yourself, if you build your house on the bedrock or the cornerstone of Jesus Christ, then you can withstand the storm. And so that's what I want to pursue, and that's what I want to do, and that's what I implore others to do, is commit your life to the truth. The way that Truman did, but the actual truth, not not that you're sad that your girlfriend from high school left you. So thank you, everyone, for listening. I'm sorry if this was a short video, but short but sweet. I don't have a book this video to promote because I'm in a legal battle with my publishing company, and so hopefully I'll get a book for you guys next time, or some kind of media. In the meantime, go visit my website, Goofy Goober Andyland Show. www.com.
Org.
Or it's not a company.
So, thank you for joining us. Thank you, Sarah, for coming on. Join me next time on the Andyland mid-afternoon show. I think it's still mid-afternoon-ish. Yeah. Peace.